sorry. I just got over something.
You did good, girl. Talking about changing to the rock.
Oh, change.
And it's okay.
Change on the rock.
Whoa. Saying up to over on the
silence them, put them in vibrate mode, it'd probably be pretty helpful for everybody. So right now we are actually live streaming on YouTube and Facebook. The response to this talk was absolutely overwhelming. We had several people contact us from overseas. TV, we're very thankful, is here as well, as Mr. Jonathan Talbot from J-Rock Communications, who's taking care of the live stream. So thank you to all of them, and also to a very special. Sorry, thank you. And also to Nigel Pitcher back there, and we can hope that all the rain is getting out now before a cup match. So if we all collectively think that, it may happen. Also, it is my job. I know that he was doing work out on the island, Trunk Island in Harrington Sound as well. So we're incredibly grateful to his continued interest in Bermuda. Out in your copies, I know that both of them are available at the bookstores locally as well as the library. More recently, The Isle of Devils, The Isle of Saints, An Atlantic History of Bermuda, 1609.
So I hope it's okay if I remain seating. I was actually digging up through 3 o'clock, our archaeology, and all 13 years of digging combined previously. So your tanks are all full, enough with this rain.
We agree.
Yes. An elephant in the room by beginning with a quote from Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. He basically implores us not to judge a person by, what can he tell us? So I just want to talk a little bit about how I approach history and to sort of perhaps put it, I tell them to think about the 3 A's: author, audience, agenda. Who's the person who's writing or speaking? Who are they trying to reach as an audience, and what are they trying to persuade you? Because every talk, every text, wants you to think and see the world in their particular way. So, yes, I'm an outsider. I'm not a Bermudian. I'm probably missing all sorts of complex, fascinating puzzle. So much is going on, and maybe half the pieces are there to work on this puzzle. Now, my historical approach, forming a reasonable explanation, hypothesis that is fitting the evidence that I read, encounter, and then facts. They're not truth. People use words like facts and truth. Be suspicious of them. History changes all the time with new information and also by shifting perspectives. Synonyms in that heritage is often what you believe, what you've been told, whereas history is anchored in texts, images, art, stories about people's heritage drawn from history. These are, of course, selected stories from the the huge amounts of information that are out there, the many stories that you in the audience give it meaning as you hear it and fit it into your worldview and past. Research, but I stress it's an interpretation. It's not a fact. It's subject to debate. In fact, it should be debated. History is a conversation. It's even an argument. I'd say enough philosophy then. Let's shift to the actual subject as we sort of go through it, and in St. George's. And I would emphasize that Black history and Bermudian St. George's history were landed, lived, worked, and shared their knowledge to shape the English colony in its very earliest days. Within 4 years, Black resident, inhabitant, person brought here, arrived on the Edwin in the summer of 1616. He was, and it returned with, in the quote of a later governor, an Indian and a Negro, the first the islands had ever seen. So it not only brought plants, but it also, these first 2 non-white inhabitants were divers. The company thought there were pearl oysters all over the reefs. That's why Norwood was sent out with his diving bell. Important story for earliest Black history in Bermuda also happened in June 1616, but it started on the other side. In the Bermuda Company, there was one of the investors, Sir Robert Rich, the Earl of Warwick, who was very much in his own private navy. He was sort of a radical Puritan who wanted to privateer or pirates, who tricks him out of his Iberian prize. And so Powell then spends 5-6 months marauding throughout who knows where in the island of Hispaniola, could have been the north coast of Venezuela, could have been the coast of Mexico, sort of by Veracruz. We really don't know, but a large number of people's Black families begin soon after the arrival of Powell and the Hopewell. Now, Governor Daniel Tucker, longhouse behind his governor's house in St. George's. And so St. George's has the entire Black population of Bermuda really up through 1619. And then it would rot. They really couldn't get it to market. And they all knew that the key to success was to find people who were already experienced in years. Bermuda is sending 60 to 80,000 pounds of tobacco to London at a time when it is fetching 2 shillings 6 pence a pound. So think of like the price of cocaine these days. You know, I think, and rolling tobacco after soaking it in brine, that was sort of the secret process by which rolled, grated Spanish tobacco. The Africans who arrive in 1619 have arrived after Virginians have figured out a different way to cure their tobacco. So even though tobacco, the same plant takes 2 very different forms because of their 2 very different curing processes. But it is the 1617 Hopewell voyage that sets where Africans all come 1, 2, 3 in the summer, in fact in August of 1619. This is where Virginia, Jamestown's story starts. But in fact, the 1619, not quite deliberately, he got mad at the Bermuda Company for taking all of his prizes and captives from him. So 2 people of African descent. So there's 2 more adding to the population. Next, a few weeks later, comes along an outright pirate named Kirby. He, or the Earl of Warwick, arrives with 29 Angolan slaves who were captured from an Iberian, Portuguese slaving vessel to Veracruz. And half of those individuals taken from that ship wind up in Jamestown, the other half wind up here in Bermuda. But after that, there's a virtual cessation, and it is right in the very center of St. George's. It is basically the garden of the Globe Hotel Museum, which we would say is sort of the epicenter, the with St. Peter's Church behind it. If you transpose that to a map, the red line shows you where that 16 said that these Africans, these slaves, are basically the most important resource that he had to work with, these slaves, and, if you will, put to work by the various governors to whom they were essentially a labor force, part of the governor's salary. And they lived in houses or appreciated. In 1972, the Paradise Gift Shop burned down, or whatever the shop was before. The Paradise Shop was built, huge, long building, and it basically obliterated all of those sites, all of the archaeology that we might have. Fixing up the house, went and quarried a bunch of stone, also obliterating the post holes and the footprints of those early houses. 60, 70 years, this was the home, a large concentration, the first, if you will, Black community in Bermuda. Now, I mentioned a wave of unfree captive Africans Hispanic Africans are brought to Bermuda. This really changes the dynamic, the sort of expands Black history throughout the 30s, as the Dutch are as well. And he also sets up a separate colony, the island of Providence, off the 10 years attacking Spanish settlements, that Spain mobilizes a battle fleet and attacks and wipes out the island. But in the 11 years it exists, on the venture. And 2 of Bermuda's 3 governors actually are governors of Providence Island as well. So in some ways, Bermuda is half the colony of Providence Island. People in Bermuda are either living in St. George's or living in the Earl of Warwick and Sir Nathaniel Rich's land in Somerset, Southampton Drive. They are selling enslaved Africans to any and all planters who can buy them. And so this